What it is, y'all, it's your old boy Pilkett. I'm coming back today with... So I've got a discussion, right? I have a big discussion point here. Now, I want to say first and foremost, I have been hoarding tickets like crazy. And I've been kind of going about this. And I'll get to the sums here in a second. But I've been kind of going about this in such a way that I was expecting them to add more things to the general pool. So let's talk about this real quick, okay? So the biggest issue I've got with this game right at the moment is that most of the units that we get are just time-limited units, or worst yet, Festas. We've had maybe, I think 2 instances of units being added to the general pool, and that was in the form of when Otaro and Freya dropped, and then more recently when the hostesses dropped. Talking about Chloe, Anya, and Lunar. Now, Chloe, Anya, and Lunar are fantastic units, and Otaro really needs no introduction. So, and Freya by extension of Otaro. I mean, not that she's second fiddle, but let's be fair. Otaro is a just crazy good character. And we can't expect the initial characters that dropped in this game to stay insanely relevant for long. Like, it is what it is. But when we've got units that dropped at, like a similar time zone that are still extremely relevant, it leaves me a bit wanting. Now, there's always going to be tier lists. There's always going to be units that are better than others. But here's kind of my biggest issue with all of this. The general pool does not get much love. When units drop, they all drop. Basically, it's time limited, and then they rerun every once in a while, and it's sparingly. Or you have the problem that we've got right now, where you've got a rerun of a Danchro Fest that ran like 3 weeks ago. And here's the big issue with this. It's 8 paid summons in order to get to pity on this unit. And if you really break that down, that's something like $200 to get to pity. The other thing that's kind of frustrating, the reason that we're going to blow all of our tickets tonight, I guess I should start on that. We're at a stage of this game where most units that drop now have to be max limit broken in order to be of any relevance whatsoever. Period, end of discussion. You've got to get to a unit max limit broken to really be terribly important. And, ooh, speaking of Freya, I will take that. Even that is the scene card, not the assist. Still, I'm a simple man, as I always say. So, not to derail too much, because the honest answer here is, and we'll go here. Let's close this out and real quickly kind of go talk about this, because if we go to upgrades here for a second, and we kind of look at someone like the Danchro Fest Ryu that came to us recently. If you go to her status, you go to her skill details, you can kind of see that as she levels up, she gets some substantial buffs. But notice she, at Limit Break 2, she's not gotten a lot of buffs to her skill 1. To get the most out of her, well, her skill 1 doesn't level up, does it? But her skill 2 gets a big boost. Now, look at that. At level, Level 2, it gets a boost. Level 3, this one gets a big boost. Goes up from 312% to 432%. And then this one goes up to 900%. So in order to get the most out of her, you have to limit break her. 585 versus 900. Even limit break 1 is 675. And while that isn't in and of itself a problem, my problem is if you've got events that basically require you to limit break these units, the units should be more accessible. And at the moment, they're not. Rates are pretty bad in this game, and they have been since day one. And the one thing that has always led me to excuse the game has been the simple fact that, unlike with Danmemo, when we would get units left, right, and center, you know, a unit at... Oh, I didn't mean to skip that. Well, look at that. We got a UR unit there. I'll take that. That was a complete accident. Let's draw again and go into this. So unlike with Danmemo, where we got a ton of units, you would have to limit break a unit. You'd have to have a unit at MLB to be of any relevance at all in the game. And I liked this game for the fact that you could have one unit and still be relevant, but that's slowly fading away. And I don't just mean in PvP and Battle Arena, things like that. If you've watched my recent content on Uncharted Battlefield and things like that, units have fallen off considerably. And that's part of the reason that I'm doing all the tickets right now, because whenever we do that specific event, I'm literally just trying to... Ooh, I like that. I'm literally just trying to obtain some limit breaks for those units. And if we're not going to get more, non-time limited units, there's really no value in hoarding these tickets. We just basically have to blow these tickets now, or they'll be... Ooh, okay. Okay. There will basically, as best I could tell, probably be a day I will take that seer. 100% I'll take a seer assist. There's just going to be a day where these tickets will be practically worthless unless they kind of do something for the general pool. And I don't see that happening. We get tons of tickets, but not enough. I just don't think they're of the same value that they were when the game initially dropped, which is once again why we're doing this. But more to the point, going back to the gacha, if I were to hit this gacha to get one unit without, getting lucky and getting it somewhere along the way, just to get to pity is $200. To max a unit out, if you don't get lucky, is $1,200. Think about that for a minute. There are people who aren't going to flinch over that. But I think there's a lot of people out there that realistically, understanding the value of a unit versus the value of money, are going to go, that's insane. And it is insane. It's completely bonkers to expect the average player to do that. Nuts. And then you have a situation where we had last month where you've got units dropping every week. Every week. It's insane. Now, I'm not saying we're at the state now where the game basically requires that by any stretch of the imagination, but it is quickly becoming that way, where the events of the game are being made to such a level of difficulty where you have to spend money. And I didn't mind with Danmemo, because with Danmemo, you get 4 or 5 units, and then to get the last couple, you would then spend 20, 30, 40 whatever bucks, and then you'd get like the guaranteed summons or something like that. But right now in this game, it's not that affordable. It's absolutely absurd to drop gachas as quickly as they do with so little value for your investment. It's crazy. And the sales themselves, like the discounted sales and stuff like that, only reset twice a year? I think we got a reset at New Year's, and if I recollect, I think they did a reset or maybe did some special sales at the anniversary. But it's not that common. And I want you to kind of take stock. I've genuinely had very, very, very good luck in this game, which is part of the reason that I've not been terribly critical of it until recent. But I want you to take stock of, while I'm summoning here, how many adventures and how many assists that we are getting. The game really just lag out. Oh no! My game crashed. Give me a second. Let me just reset that. Sorry about that. The game crashed a little bit there, but we pulled Hermes as well as the scene cards, so it's kind of nice, but my Hermes is MLB. Hermes is one of those units that has plagued me and just will not go away. But essentially, just to kind of paraphrase here, I want people to wrap their minds around the idea that if we have a pity system, that pity system should have value for the player. And if that value is just, okay, you get one unit, that unit should be usable and relevant. And while I would argue that, yes, people that wail, people that go crazy, people that are like doing... Oh, wow, we got a surprise adventurer. People that are supporting the game should have a benefit. But that benefit could be in like a PvP respect. I have always argued for, obviously there has to be some reason for the whales to wail. And if it's in like PvP, in this case Battle Arena or Magic Stone Scrambler and all that, I think that's fine. But when it comes to just the general, like, when we run Test of Strength of these events, or when we run Uncharted Battlefield, or when we run, anything like that, if it's requiring, especially like the tests of strengths have gotten so incredibly difficult, if you don't have the new unit and at least a dupe in that new unit, and the raids are even getting to that point too. It's absurd to me that the raids, the big group thing that's supposed to be a community event, pretty much requires that you have a new unit with at least 1 or 2 limit breaks. It's unfathomable. It's crazy. And then on top of that, they don't drop enough free-to-play currency for us to even do one gacha all the way to fruition. There's not enough free-to-play currency. There's not enough value for the currency that we're, the actual physical money that we're putting into it. And it's $1,200 to maximum break a unit. You're just going to run out of players, because if you don't have a free-to-play life in the game, you're quickly going to run out of the average player that can play this game, because there are places in the world where they're not even allowed to spend money in games like this. Now, that isn't to say that the whole game should be free-to-play. Obviously, at the end of the day, I support Amori. I support the creator of the franchise, and that is why I've spent money in these games. That's why I played these games, and that's why I make content in these games, is to help support the creator of this franchise, who's brought so much joy and so much, this great story into our lives. If those of you that were following us with Danmemo, when we had that gacha, when we had that game, every other year we had an anniversary event that literally expounded on the stories. If you go to the store today, you see the Astrea record story that originated as an anniversary story in Danmemo. And so my argument to that is, while at the end of the day, sure, I had to go spend, $10, $15 on the book. There's 3 books in the series, so whatever. But I have those books on my shelf. But if we didn't play that game, if we didn't support that game, that story would have just been an unfulfilled manuscript sitting on Amori's desk, never to be fulfilled. I'm not getting that with this game. And I don't see the level of stories, not just anniversary, just in general, that we got with Danmemo. I'm not seeing the value for what we're inputting in this. And honestly, the whole December grind just felt very disrespectful for the average player, because 1 out of every 1,000 players, if even that, is going to have the resources, and even if you have the resources, the willingness to go that deep in a game like this. If you do, more power to you. And I'm sure there's some people that are going to be like, I'm fine with it. More power to you. Enjoy it. But what I'm saying is the average player absolutely is not going to be able to sustain gameplay if this keeps up. And I don't want to say we're beyond the point of no return. I got another red Minotaur, as I told you guys. I get really lucky at this. But it's a scene card. Do we have an adventure in here? That's the big if. We'll find out in a minute. I don't know. I've been sitting on this because I don't like to make negative content, guys. I really don't like... I don't want to be negative about the game. Got another red Minotaur back-to-back. God, that really doesn't do much for my... I told you guys, I get really lucky. But so few people will see this when they're doing their general gachas. And then you have situations like that where a unit just plagues you. Him and Hermes, man. It's one of those, if you get a red Minotaur, you get the runes. It's like, please don't let it be one of these guys. Let it be someone I can actually use. And, you know, free-to-play tickets, it is what it is. But the amount of money that it would take to have any level of relevance in this game is completely unsustainable for the average player. In fact, the amount of money it would take to even get to pity on every banner that has dropped in the past month, unsustainable for the average player. It should not be what it is. If you're going to spend the kind of money to get to pity on this banner, that single unit should be relevant enough. Should be completely viable in the events where they're relevant. Like, i.e., obviously this is a defensive unit. You know, I'm not saying they should be the top tier attacker for all time, but let's go into the character details for a minute. But if you're in an earth element fight and you've got him as a defender, and he should at least be able to or they technically should be able to function at their role. If you have an attacker, for goodness sakes, like, let's say, Anniversary Bell really didn't come alive until he got at least his first limit break, and I believe it was 3 in where he actually became useful in most events. I got absolutely shafted on the banner, and I did not have a limit break until I went in and did his manual limit breaks with the rainbow gems. And that's another crazy point. All these Festa units, let's go to Bell specifically. So I wound up having to spend my rainbow gems on him. It's twice as many rainbow gems in a Festa unit to limit break him. It's absurd to me that they expect us to keep that up with every unit that comes out. Now, agree with me, disagree with me, whatever, you know, sound off in the comments. But this needs to change. They need to calm down, number one, on the number of banners. Number two, pity should be significantly less expensive. If they're going to require limit breaking units, pity should be a quarter the price that it is. Or less. Because it's crazy to think that you're going to spend $200 per limit break. Batshit to think that that is even a phenomenon. And then, of course, with the way gachas work, within 6 months to a year, most of these units just get phased out. We have not necessarily seen that, but if we go back to the baseline gacha, I challenge you to find a unit that was a day one unit, because I mean they're about a year and a half old, that with a single limit break, without any, come on, draw right, there you go. Find one unit that's a day one unit. I'm not talking Otaro. We obviously know Otaro's an exception to the rule, but Otaro's only just recently coming up on a year old. Chloe, Lunar, and Anya, they're all about 6 months old. We're talking Bet, Gareth, Earthleafia might be an exception to the rule just because she recently got a rebalance. But she's one of the rare ones that's even gotten a rebalance. Most units probably just don't hold their own. Wouldn't be above C tier, or if even that, on any kind of tier list. Especially compared to like the time limiteds and things like that. So they either need to nurture this, make this a lot more viable, put some of those time limiteds in here when they, you know, become 6 months to a year old. That might be one solution. That would make this way better. Way better. Way more sustainable. Cut the rates way down. Give us more guarantees if you're going to require limit breaks, or just all around just make it less expensive. But I'm worried, or give us a lot more free to play. There's a lot of possible solutions here, but as it stands right now, I don't see this being viable for long. But that's my opinion. Comments are yours. Let me know what you guys think. And I'm sure I've overlooked or overthought something. But again, I enjoy the gameplay. I enjoy what we have. But I worry for the long term of this. And that's my honest opinion. Catch you guys on the next one.